Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and welcome to a match in progress. Our hero, let me look up his name real quick, something about where did I put it? I was not prepared. FlightSimTest is in the G55, I think it's Series 1. This would be the regular tech tree variant, one of the G55s. And I forgot that you can get this aircraft as he fails to get the kill in a head-on here. And we've gone into cinematic mode just because of the incredible beauty of this aircraft. I forgot you could get the G55 Series 1 in silver, and it is beautiful. Not just the smooth, clean lines of the plane, but also the way it cuts through the air, the way it cuts through enemy fighters as an ally takes down that enemy that FlightSimTest was turning with. And it cuts a nice profile with that shiny chrome finish. Beautiful, sweet aircraft, aluminum, illuminated beautifully by the nice lighting effects in the game of War Thunder. That is something to touch on, by the way. War Thunder is looking pretty good lately. The game has gone through a lot of changes in terms of the graphics over the years that I've been playing it, and the next thing I'd like to see is sexy clouds, but, well, that'll probably happen when it happens. And what's happening now looks like, is that a Jug? Nope, it is a Mustang. You could tell before he even showed up. That explains why it was so hard for him to get on target. Not an issue that FlightSimTest is having here. The Mustang, God rest his beautiful soul, has a difficult rudder. It doesn't whip your plane around the way you need it to in a high-speed attack, so that just wasn't working out for FlightSimTest's first contestant here. Now, a second or third opponent, I suppose. He did already shoot somebody down. I think I mentioned that. But this is where things get spicy. In a barrel engagement with a Spitfire, this, a lightweight, nimble aircraft that's the king of flat turning most of the time, and a champion of climb rate as well. Performs nicely at low altitude where we find ourselves so often, and yet it's not the energy fighter you need it to be if you're going to try and pull these vertical maneuvers against FST in his G55 Series 1. And yet, I think you can hear my daughter on the couch and my wife, they're behind me, all snuggled up with some blankets. Everybody's sick today, just so you know. And this is a beautiful dogfight we're seeing between a few experienced players. That Spitfire not making it easy for FST to get an advantage. And yet, now that he's on his tail, one of the disadvantages of the Spitfire, very limited ammunition, the guns spaced fairly widely apart, and you can see that FST is just outside the convergence range of the Spitfire, and now that enemy Spit has another G55 on his tail. The G55 with 3 installments. Ooh, beautiful there. Each one of them taking off the enemy from their friend's tail. As I was saying, the guns on the G55 placed very nicely to fire for maximum effect, mounted close in the wing roots, and also straight through the engine for a very useful and highly deadly in terms of the MG151 20mm that they have mounted. So that was a nice look at FST's gameplay in the G55, and now we go to a fan favorite, Qwerty's doing some ridiculousness, taking his top tier gameplay into lower tier, and what better vehicle to use than the Boarhound. I've talked about this, what do you call it? Heavy armored car, I guess? On the channel quite a number of times. It's a favorite with me as well. It has perhaps the best gun stability and overall gun handling at its tier, and it certainly has a fantastic fire rate, great armor penetration with an APHE round that does the business quite nicely. It kind of makes you wish we saw more 57mm high-velocity cannons on these low-rank American vehicles, but I'm sure that's something for another time. There's probably something else out there that mounted something similar that the Americans can enjoy. At the very least, it is a fantastic round, a top-of-the-line gun handling system, as you see here. And if you're paying attention to where Qwerty's is on the map, he's cycling between a few different power positions here, really being aggressive and taking the risks that he needs to take to get a huge number of kills. You can see him now pushing out into the open here, a risky move if you're not very aware of what's going on, and yet, as you see demonstrated by the Boarhound's fantastic reverse rate, it's not too difficult to get yourself out of a bit of a bold position and into something of a more defensible area. As we listen, I'm more able to hear it than you are, for enemy gunfire, hearing a couple of shots here, and I'm not quite sure if it's a replay bug or whatnot, but that sounded like they were coming from Qwerty's himself, and yet we see nothing, and he didn't have anything to shoot at anyway. A bit of an unlucky ricochet on that Italian spaghetti box, followed up after I've given so many compliments to this cannon by a nonsensical bounce on a T-34. You just touch that stellinium track and even a 122mm round will just disappear. But a nice hit into the important bits of both of those vehicles. Again, the reload rate and the reliability of this gun can make up for some of the foibles of the game engine itself. As Qwerty's, again, moving to another firing position, this time very bold, very out in the open. Will he have to rely on the Boarhound's ability to tank one or two shots? Oh, we'll have to see. He does have his rather girthy engine deck extended toward what is perhaps the most populous area of enemy advance, and yet catching an enemy tank advancing toward the combat zone. This Panzer IV, it looks like an early model Panzer IV with the short 75 and a very short time to make it work, as Qwerty's does take him down. And it sounds like the audio might be a little bit janky in this one. BT7, I think, could have been a BT5. They look very similar to me. Gets taken down with a single shot, as is commonly the case if you manage to get your APHE into that crowded crew compartment. Of course, that speedy Soviet soapbox is fantastic for getting into a good position and not so good for dealing with things if you get caught flat-footed. Qwerty's coming to the rescue there, or at least avenging an ally for his 6th kill in a short amount of time, and this will by no means be the end to his rampage. And this is the way that you get lots of kills in War Thunder, at least much more consistently, and not just to play low tier, which is the fun tier, by the way. I've played the full spectrum of battle ratings in War Thunder, and I've got to say, low tier is where the fun is. But also, he is going from one power position to another. If you stay in one spot, you're kind of counting on the enemy team to come and present themselves to you. Instead, what Qwerty's is doing here, quite effectively by the way, this isn't something that always works out, but it's a little bit more reliable at low tier than it is at top tier. Again, it's a nice place to take a vacation. Getting a bit of a unlucky bounce on the Stug. I think that's around 15 millimeters of sloped armor where that optic port sticks out of. Sort of a, what's it called? A periscope, I believe. And yet his second shot so quickly reloaded, taken before the Stug could even get his barrel to stop bouncing. It really goes to show the reliability of the Boarhound's gun handling. Its nice, stable platform with those 8 wheels and heavy chassis and the fast reload of the gun can really go a long way, especially when backed up by a decent amount of skill. The Boarhound, a event premium vehicle that is consistently fun to play and regularly available on the Gaijin marketplace. I think it's going for a pretty ridiculous amount of money right now, but I'd pay $15-20 for it. You'll get a lot more fun out of it than the KA50 and at a significantly lower price. Although this is not a grinding machine. This is for funsies. And you can see this is from a much less stable excuse me, update of War Thunder. That's right. This is from 1.89, I think, and it does happen as we get a little bit of desync there. That was not a cut in the video. That was just the replay being wonky. Server stability has been improved with update 1.9. What is it? 1.93 that we're on right now? 1.91? I don't know. I just live here. Anyway, Qwerty's taking his first shot of the match and knocking down that house because, I guess, reasons, has managed to keep his crew alive and kicking, even if you're, spitting out some broken teeth. The enemy team cannot say so much. German tanks with their flat armor, Soviet beasts with their relatively poor gun handling, even if they have the armor penetration and the stopping power to take down a target, well, they've got to get on target in the first place. Qwerty's with something of an unlucky overpen there. I think it just smelled the optics port and ceased to exist, as you do. And yet, that 76mm derp gun, tier 1 on the German team, on the Soviet team, I can't remember what that's called, but it's a true treasure. I don't know if I've mentioned the bouncy house nature of the fences here, but that's more evidence of the very poor client-server connections. The server stability in War Thunder was very, very poor with the previous update, and we're now living in a golden age of slightly improved server stability, and that's honestly, looking back on it, it's not something I really talked about quite a bit, but as an experienced player of the game, somebody that can just flee from entire battle ratings or nations that I'm not enjoying anymore, there's no escape from a bad server connection or bad netcode, as it were. In other words, if your bullets disappear and if tanks are teleporting around and if fences are flipping you over and ticking you off, well, then there's no place in the game that's safe for you. And yet, Qwerty's here, showing that there's no place on the map that's safe for the enemy team, as the Japan map does have something of exposed spawn zones and areas of advance outside the spawn, and yet these enemies could have a shot on Qwerty's if they had the tactical awareness to peek around, and that's something that I highly recommend, to all of you. Qwerty's not showing that quite so much here, but I have a habit of checking 180. So I'll look 90 degrees to my left, 90 degrees to my right, and consider where the enemy might be. Now, if you're just running around with your head on a completely loose hinge and trying to look around everywhere, you're going to end up missing a lot of the action. But take a chance to check your 6 every now and then, check your corners, and set yourself up in a position where somebody else is going to die if they don't notice what's happening behind you. And that means using the finest armor in the game, the spaced armor provided by your allies' tanks. And yet Qwerty's here, capitalizing on the fact that the enemy team is being swamped by this point, now moving in to closer range to open up all of those firing angles and take down the rest of the enemy team for 17 kills in that low tier, fun tier battle. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed these 2 quick replays, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. You saw there's an invite to the Discord, and that is the best place to reach me with your replays. and I'd like to see all of you there, if you're interested. Catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.